Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be looking at how to factor and solve non-monic quadratics. We previously looked at how to do monic quadratics where the term, or the number, I should say, next to x squared was 1. But in this case, a non-monic refers to when we have a number other than 1 next to our x squared term. So in this case, we have 2. Now to do monic quadratics, where we have all three of these terms, the x squared term, the x term, and the number, we simply used the PSF method. And then by finding the factors, or the two numbers that multiplied to this last number and added to this middle number, we were able to put those straight into our brackets and find the answers. But when we have a non-monic, so a number other than 2, a number other than 1 next to the x squared term, we're going to still do PSF, but we're going to do something slightly different after. So let's see what we do. So with this particular one, we first check that we've got all our terms on one side, and we see that the x squared term is positive, which it is. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to write our PSF over here, which means product, sum, and factor. And as you might remember with monic quadratics, the product was simply the minus 2, or the number on the end. But this time, because we have a non-monic, or 2 in front of the x squared, our product is actually going to be this number times this number, which is 2 times minus 2, which is minus 4. So that's the first thing that's different. Our sum is still going to be this middle number, which doesn't include the x. So that bit is the same. Now we still find our factors the same way as we did with the monic quadratics when we just had x squared at the front. So let's see what numbers multiply to minus 4 and add to minus 3. Well, what numbers multiply to minus 4? We could have minus 4 times 1. Minus 4 and 1. Well, what's minus 4 plus 1? Well, they equal minus 3, which is what we want. So we know that our two factors are minus 4 and 1. Now, instead of putting these numbers straight into the brackets, which is what we're going to factorize this quadratic into, or factor, remember factorize and factor are the same thing, we're not going to put these straight in here, and we're not just going to write x and x. Now, why don't we just write x and x at the front? Because we're not looking at x squared, we're looking at 2x squared. So the first term is going to be given by 2x and x, but I'm not going to write that in yet. What I'm going to do is use these factors, I'm going to do this underneath, to split up this middle term. So this is the key thing with non-monics, is we look at this middle term, or the term that just has an x on it, and I want to rewrite minus 3x using these two terms. And the way we do that is we rewrite it. So we write 2x squared. So I'm coming from down here to here. And I'm going to write minus 4x plus 1x. And I don't need to write the 1 because that is assumed or invisible. And then I write the minus 2 at the end. Now, this is exactly the same as this. It's just minus 4x plus x instead of minus 3x. But those two, we know, give the same thing. The reason we split this up is because our next step is going to be grouping in pairs. Because we've got 4 terms, I am going to factorize these two and these 2 terms separately. So to do that, we simply get the common factor, the highest common factor from both these terms, which is 2x, take them out of the brackets, and then we put inside the brackets what we need to take us back to what we had up here. So 2x times x brings us to 2x squared, and 2x times minus 2 takes us to minus 4x. So we've done those 2 terms. This is the step of grouping in pairs. We now are going to group this pair. So we have x minus 2, the highest common factor is just 1, so I just write 1, and then obviously it is just x minus 2, because there was no other higher common factor to take out. Now, what do you notice about these two brackets? They're exactly the same, and this will always happen if you do this step correctly and split up this middle term into your two factors and put x next to each one and then group them in pairs. So what we do next is, because these brackets are exactly the same, we can factor those brackets out because they are identical in both terms. So we're going to take x minus 2 out, and we're going to put these other two bits in the other bracket. Because again, the x minus 2 here is taken outside because it's common to both terms. So just imagine that x minus 2 was like a y, and this is like a y. And we can see that 2xy plus y has a common factor of y. So we're just simply taking them out. And to get it back to to get us back to this original expression, we need to times x minus 2 by 2x. And we need to times x minus 2 by 1 to take us back there. So looking at that now, we can see that we have now fully factorized this expression by finding factors of minus 4 and 1 and splitting up this middle term. So from here, we just do what we've always previously done, and we solve the rest of the equation. We try to make each bracket equal 0. So we know that x minus 2 to be 0, we just add 2 to this other side. So we get x equals 2. And over here, we need 2x plus 1 to equal 0 for the whole side to equal 0. So what we do is we take the minus 1 to this side, 2x equals minus 1, and divide by 2, which gives us, and I'll just write it over here, x equals minus 1 over 2. So there's our two solutions. So I hope that all makes sense, guys. That's how we do our non-monic quadratics. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at another example so you guys can fully understand this method. So let's go back through all our steps using this example of 5x squared plus 7x minus 2. So what's our first step? Well, we make sure everything is on one side and we want the x squared to be positive. So I'm going to be taking the minus 2 over to this side by adding it. So I'll rewrite this out as 5x squared plus 7x plus 2 equals 0. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to do PSF, and I'm going to do that on the side here again. So again, what's our product? Well, our product is not just 2, like in the monic quadratics, because we have a 5 here. I need to multiply this 5 by the 2, which gives us 10. What's our sum? It's still plus 7. And our factors? Well, let's see. What numbers multiply to 10 and add to 7? Well, we could have 10 and 1, but 10 plus 1 equals 11, and we want to get to 7. What about 5 and 2? Well, if we plus them together, we get 7. So we know that 5 and 2 give us our factors. Now remember, these numbers are not going straight into the brackets, but rather they are going to tell us how to split up this 7x. So we're going to rewrite this quadratic as 5x squared plus 5x plus 2x, because 5x plus 2x is 7x, plus 2 equals 0. And from here, if you remember our next step, we're going to group these two parts and then factor them separately. So we take our common factor from these two and we pretend that those two are not there. What's the common factor for these two terms? Well, we can see that 5x and 5x are the highest common factors. So I take out 5x, and then in the bracket, I'm going to put x plus 1, because 5x times x equals 5x squared, and 5x times 1 equals 5x. For these two terms, we can see that the highest common factor is 2. So I'm going to keep the, notice it's plus 2. If it was negative 2, I would make this negative 2. So we have plus 2, and then what needs to go in the bracket? Well, 2 times x and 2 times 1. And what do you know? If you've done this right, these two brackets should always be exactly the same. So from here, we know that these two brackets are a common factor to both of these bits. So I'm going to take this x plus 1 out of both, and I'm going to make sure that I'm times it by the right term to get us back to where we were in this line. So x plus 1 times 5x, and x plus 1 times plus 2 equals 0. What I do next is I make sure each bracket can equal 0. So I need to make x plus 1 equals 0 for the whole side to equal 0. So to find it from there, we minus 1 to the other side, and we get x equals minus 1. And to make this bracket equal 0, we simply write out 5x plus 2 equals 0, minus 2 to the other side. So we get 5x equals minus 2. And then our last step is to divide by 5 and get x equals minus 2 over 5. And there are our two solutions. So I hope all these steps make sense, guys. If you can follow these steps along with the steps from the other video, you should be able to solve any other type of quadratic by factoring them first. If you are unable to factor them, then your next step might be to use the quadratic formula. And we'll look at that in the next video.